Vipul, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Just a quick introduction. Vipul is the Chief Product Officer at OAG, one of Plug and Play's corporate partners. And for those of you who don't know OAG, I will let Vipul provide a quick overview of who they are. But one of their primary offerings, I would say, to not just travel industry stakeholders is data. Data across flight schedules, airport stats, and I would say in the current environment, Vipul, data has become even more important than it was, I would say, at least in North America about a month or two ago. So we're very excited to have you on board, and I believe you're going to be sharing some slides with us.
That's right, Amir. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to join you. Hopefully, it could have been in different circumstances, but thanks for Plug and Play to give us the opportunity to participate here. I have some slides only because we, as a business, have lots and lots of data. So you could just acknowledge once you see something on screen.
We can see your screen, Vipul.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much. So, there's a lot going on at this point in time, and I'm sure we're, and like you, are hungry for a lot of data, insight, and hopefully some hope as to when is these things going to change. So we know there's change at the moment. We know there are going to be lessons learned through this period, but then when do we recover? So, there's no denying it. The impact of COVID-19 has been staggering across the industry. And we sit at the very heart of this, and we work with many of you, perhaps on this call already, but many of the sectors that are probably represented here in this audience. And I'm going to take you through some insights, also share some thoughts on the future, where we're seeing some green shoots, perhaps, and some of you mentioned that before, but how businesses are best shaped up to bounce back. So we're going to talk about some of that. So before I dive into our data, some of you are already familiar with OAG. Understand our history and our expertise in the flight data market. But for those of you who are not familiar with OAG, we've been doing this for over 90 years. We've been serving the air travel ecosystem, primarily airlines, but with selling tickets, distribution, and then analysis around the schedules around the world, the status, and so on. So these days, that's very much different. We're very much technical-led or technology, which is powered by all data. We get all of our data from the airlines, the airports, governments, and industry bodies, and GDSs, for example. We process all that information, and the data in the middle, where we talk about changes and updates, that's understated right now. So typically, in any given day, we process 120,000 schedule changes inside our database. Currently, that's running at nearly twice that number because of what's being taken out of capacity and what's coming back in, for example, in China. And all this data is supporting a number of different use cases. So as Amir mentioned, we're serving the OTA industry, the TMCs, but also, for example, refueling companies, the automobile, the limo services, and so forth, and governments and educational resources. So we're serving all of those. Now, first and foremost, when we saw what's going on in the marketplace, clearly our first reaction was distress in the industry, distress in the ecosystem. What does it mean for us? First place we went is what's the health and safety situation with our staff? We moved quickly to remote working, trying to understand what's going on in their families. They're all babysitting as well as doing their work, but we are 100% remote, and we continue to operate globally. But the other part of this is what Patrice mentioned, which is the growth mindset, which is really interesting for us because it's just what we see, but what you might want to take away from here. So what we're seeing in the volatile marketplace, we're actually getting a lot more ask of data from our customers, and potentially entities that hadn't thought about us before are coming back to us even more. So let's get down to the meat of what we're seeing. So there's no avoiding the truth that we're dealing with right now. There's been horrible headlines. The global capacity has fallen by 35% in 10 weeks. 137 million fewer seats on a global scale. And as I think Vienna Airport mentioned, capacity in some places by some carriers has been dropped by 90%, maybe even going to zero with parked aircraft. And we anticipate further reduction on a global scale in the next few weeks. So nobody's escaped this in the entire ecosystem. Specifically in Western Europe, we've seen capacity drop by 53%. We expect more. And then Europe and Middle East as well. So everyone is affected, but how far can it go? So what we looked at in our database, we're picking this up on a daily basis. In the last 3 weeks, we've seen an accelerated level of capacity cuts. So just in the last 3 weeks alone, on an AAGR basis, that's about 14.3%. And we continue to see that course, but hopefully not for that much longer. And tagging onto our hope statement, I'd like to kind of step through what could play out in the future. We believe that this is going to bottom out by the end of April. And why do we believe that? Is because if you look at the geography and the heat map we have here, comparing where the capacity that's been removed is shifting around the globe. Before, the capacity was held back in the China region, and the domestic capacity is increasing in China, not to levels as you'd expect, but that shift is happening and it's traveling west. So it's heading to Europe and it's heading into the Americas. So it does mean that improvements and market stimulation, it will be staggered in some places before others, but we do anticipate the bottoming out at this point in time based on what the data is telling us at the end of April. But then you get in the question of what is the recovery cycle? Is it a V recovery or is it a U-shaped recovery? So the only place we can look to as to where there is any signs of recovery is China. So let's focus in on there. So China, as you know, first in, first out. It was we saw dramatic cuts. Capacity reached its lowest point in the 5 weeks due to the event. So I think China is the market to watch as an example, as a proxy for other regions as well. So they are, we believe, the first likely to pick up, we think, and we can learn from them. So where we've seen is in China, domestic capacity is picking up because of government restrictions being released a little bit. We're also seeing cargo rates because clearly we're seeing freight wanting to be shipped around the world as well as domestically. So we know a lot of entities are looking for cargo, and logistics firms are looking for cargo availability and how to get their freight not just shipped domestically and potentially around the world. So that's going to open up as well as a starting point. And then we potentially see international travel being opened up as demand comes back online. So we track demand information, so we have some booking data as well as schedule data. And what we're doing, we're looking at our data from a machine learning perspective and comparing status information against schedule information, looking at booking data to see whether the green shoots could be easing things up overall. So what can we learn? So we believe the domestic market in every region, particularly the larger countries, will open up. That's relevant for China, that's relevant for Americas. Domestic is a tough statement for Europe, right? Because there's a very much little on a large scale travel. But we should expect capacity overall to return to rates seen in China. There were excessive demands, will follow, but not immediately. We are seeing early signs And I think governments can do something to stimulate demand. So, for example, removal of taxes potentially will help. Some aggressive pricing from airlines will ease up, open up demand as well. But more than that, we do believe the landscape for airlines will be very different because there will be some distressed companies, there will be some consolidation, we'll see some ownership changes as well. And what that creates is opportunities for airlines to develop new routes, think about their network planning in a slightly different way, based on where they are placing and using their aircraft as well. What that means is for travel distribution partners, if you think of TMCs and OTAs, that's a new opportunity. So how do I capture the audience and where can I serve those? So we've got examples of, for example, Patrice, you were mentioning one of your customers asking for an alert capability to be deployed in 24 hours. Because of the demand for data, we're looking at how our services and how we can offer more information. So while we're not strategically changing our direction in terms of our roadmap, we're actually doing some more thinking around where do we pivot, what do we sequence in terms of what we make available to our customers overall. So how long will this capacity impact? How long will this be an impact? So we ran some scenarios, just looking at China, looking simple models. So we've assumed that capacity, based on what we're seeing, will bottom out at the end of April this year, by which point the capacity will be down to 30 million seats by a week point at that point. But going forward, we anticipate, in a best case scenario, capacity could recover to equivalent to the January 2020 numbers by the end of November this year. On a bad case scenario, we anticipate it to return to those same levels by early May 2021. So that's the kind of the range in how we're looking at it. So clearly, if we look at China being the first in, first out, returning to similar levels, assuming that's the same pattern that Europe and the North American markets return to, there'll be a delayed factor. So for example, if China is bottoming out in April, does that mean Europe could bottom out in May, possibly, and the Americas could bottom out in May, maybe perhaps June? So we could see that kind of staggered recovery over time. So that's how we're seeing it. Now, there's key factors here. Two key factors. When does the pickup begin? Is there hesitation in the travelers to take a domestic journey or take an international journey? And of course, the rate of recovery. We believe the rate of recovery potentially for Europe and Americas could be faster because there'll be more stability in the marketplace, more visibility on the data, better understanding of infection rates and the spread of COVID-19. But we will continue to report on what we see, and we'll have more data on a regular basis. So what do we recommend? What are the takeaways? I think that's what we're looking for is, based on what our customers are asking for, data, increase access to information on a more regular basis. So we're getting a huge demand for, can you take us from a monthly information delivery to a weekly to a daily, maybe even multiple times a day? So if you're out there looking to respond and thinking about how do I think about the volatility, take a lot more data, understand the capacity and the changes in capacity. That's another key takeaway here. And then analyze, be ready. And we're here to be able to serve that. And how do we serve that? We serve freight, cargo, logistics firms, airlines, OTAs, airports, travel providers. We're here with data to serve you at all levels. So coming back to a question, I think that was posed to a couple of the individuals here. Marketing, what are we doing in marketing? In fact, we have, while we've pulled back in some of our traditional marketing work, we're pivoting. Where are we pivoting to? We're focused on more real-time data. We're focused on daily updates. We're talking about how do you respond. So we're spending a little bit more in where we see the opportunity to grow, and that's our growth mindset. And then finally, stay informed. Thanks for the shout out earlier, Amir, about our webinar tomorrow. We have around 2,000 registered participants already. Hopefully we get a few more out of here as well. But clearly we're at the forefront in terms of, because we have the data, we can see the patterns. Do we have guarantees on what we're saying? Possibly not, probably not, but we can continue to update off the back of that data. So we have a number of activities. We're looking at new forms of delivering information. We're being tactical in terms of making data available, in terms of various tools, and how you as customers can consume it. But please get in touch, join us, and we're here to help.
Thank you so much, Vipul. Can you hear me okay? I lost a portion of my Zoom screen. I hope you can hear me okay.
We can hear you.
Perfectly. So one question I have, Vipul, and we had this discussion last week in terms of real-time data becoming more critical during a time of crisis. And this is not something new. I mean, everybody, I would say, in the aviation industry is working towards getting access to real-time data and providing real-time data. Do you think this outbreak is building on that sense of urgency in terms of both providing real-time data to stakeholders as well as getting access to real-time data? And are there any stakeholders, be it airports or airlines, that are doing it better than the rest when it comes to providing real-time data?
So it's a really good question. So there's data in, for a company like us, there's data in and there's data out, right? So we spend a lot of time collating data. You will be surprised with how many airlines potentially, or in some instances airports as well, that they provide us data on quite a low frequency. So when I say low, it's maybe monthly, because they're saying, oh, our schedules are pretty stable, that's fine. And then we get ad hoc schedule changes messages, etc. We get status data on a real-time basis. So we've certainly seen in our outreach that carriers and airlines around the world are wanting to get the data out on a more higher frequency to us. They're screaming to say, look, we have made changes. How do we inform downstream the distribution channel and everyone around the world of our changes? So either they are being proactive, but we are definitely as OAG being proactive through that process. So I think we're going to come out of this from a data into OAG, a higher frequency of content. An example of who's doing that really well is American Airlines. They've really changed just in the past few weeks. They've really stepped up in terms of how they provide, in terms of frequency of delivery, in terms of multiple times a day, even in some instances, as some carriers are moving to that. There's a second part, which is us. How do we triangulate all this information? Because not only do we take data from the carriers, but we triangulate it with what are the airports are saying to us, and what are the government bodies saying to us. So we do a lot of processing, and we're spending a lot more time in terms of how do we automate this process in a better way, and how do we confirm by looking at different sets of data. And then coming back to data out. So we have a number of customers that are taking the information on for example, a monthly frequency or a weekly frequency. I think what we're seeing now is the desire to have that data delivered and consumed on a higher frequency. Number one, to understand what's happening here and now during the down cycle through the volatility period, but also be ready for the up cycle, for the recovery. Now, once we get through these difficult periods, I guess the question is, once things are stable, does that mean the providers of the data and the consumers of the data, our customers, are they going to then revert back to a lower frequency? I don't think so. I think there is an awakening to say, I need to be ready for when things happen, and I can't wait until that point to activate an alerting capability or to get daily access. So I think there's a greater appetite based on what we're seeing overall to consume, to provide the data on a high frequency, as well as consume the data on a high frequency as well.
Thank you, Vipul. Jordan, I believe there were a couple of questions on the Q&A button.
Yeah. One of them was how, or it was from an airport, and they're asking how they can work with OAG, how they can get data.
Oh, absolutely. So if you want to get in touch with us, or maybe go through Jordan, plug and play, get in touch with us. You can certainly join the webinar tomorrow. That's already on LinkedIn. So if you want to join, and go to oag.com and you can register there. There'll be more details about the programs we have, the data we have. We're moving to, we have a weekly blog around this during the COVID-19 period, but we're also looking at doing some daily updates as well. Certainly data is available, but you can also provide us data based on what's going on in your airport.
That's perfect. Another question was, with OAG's data set, were you able to predict the COVID-19 going to or becoming a global pandemic? If you knew, what did you do with that data?
Okay, so I think if we would have predicted the global pandemic, it would have been kind of a preemptive content set. I wouldn't describe it as preemptive of the pandemic. I could describe it as our data will provide you signals, because you can look at global booking levels, you can look at global capacity, what's being taken out, as information and signals as to what might mean for you. And for you, whether you are a TMC, what does that mean for what's available? If you are a hotel or hospitality or a destination marketing organization, what does it mean for you? Where are your travelers, your customers going to come from? So there's data and signals in terms of what we would have picked up and what we're seeing today. But also in the recovery phase, there's a lot of data still as capacity comes back online, that might start signaling to you level of bookings from an origination to a destination and level of capacity being available from origination to destination. Again, that's data items. And of course, if you're an airline or hospitality, what relationships do you need to build between an airport and airline? Which airlines do you want to attract to your airport? And likewise for an airline, which airports do you want to go to in the future? So there's opportunities in the data, and you can look for signals.
And then Vipul, one more. Out of all of your data sets, which would be the top and most useful for the industry to take advantage of over the next few weeks?
I think the first and foremost, it is schedule information. The schedule information is a clear view into capacity taken out, taken in. The capacity information will also tell you which airlines, which airports, which routes, whether it's domestic, whether it's international. So the starting point would be the schedule information, I believe. And if you want to go broader, then there is also, you can look at some booking information. We have some analytical tools that you could be using to understand what are the levels of bookings that are happening. So there's information there. And then once you see capacity coming online and travelers coming online over the coming months, you might want to take access to some of our status information, because that will give you the ability to serve your customers on a real-time basis with changes in aircraft being taken online, taken offline, and rescheduled, for example.
Got it.
Vipul, one question from my side, I guess two questions. Number one, I know you guys have always been so generous, when I say you guys, OAG, when it comes to startup-friendly packages for your data. Are you doing similar things in terms of your regular clients during these trying times as their cash flows dry up? Meaning, are you becoming a little bit flexible on the fees and the pricing structure you have for your data? Again, I understand that the value of that data has gone up tremendously, if not exponentially, but are you hearing signals from your customers that maybe they're not willing to pay as much for the data, or they can't afford to pay for the data? And do you have any solutions to that request? If you can touch up on that, that would be great.
Okay, point number one. So how are we helping? So we understand this is a stressful, and potentially companies will be distressed circumstances, not in a legal term, but just being distressed. So for our existing customers, number one is there's a lot of data here. So we're able to provide some insights through our analysis, and I just giving you a very high level glimpse of some of the analysis here. So information through the analysis. So what can they take out of that? Number one. Number two, we are doing some quick innovation and deploying some analysis that will provide more insight, more daily insights, to be able to do some analysis that which they wouldn't be able to do before. So that's going to open up capabilities to get some visibility. And number three, while we're not going down the road of any deferrals and payments and so on, what we're looking at is we're opening up the ability to access a higher frequency of data, because that's the value to them. So if they're taking information on a monthly basis, how do we move them to a daily or a weekly, for example, based on their needs? And then we'll work with them, say, well, how do you go back out to subscribing at that level at the right time?
Thank you, Vipul. I think since we have Vienna International still online, I see Patrice, you're still with us. And Saeed was with us as well. I believe he can hear us. Maybe we can use the remainder of the time to open it up to the audience so they could ask questions via voice. Olivia, are you online?
I am.
Great. So for the folks on the line today, I'm assuming Patrice has a few more minutes. Vipul is online. Jordan is here, and Vienna International folks, Wolfgang and Rita, are still available. Thank you, by the way, Wolfgang and Rita, for staying so late. I know it's close to 7 p.m. your time. But let's open it up to the audience, and Olivia can unmute you if there's any particular questions from the folks who are still online for any of the panelists or plug and play folks.
Yeah, if you guys can just raise your hand, and then I can unmute you guys.
Make sure to click the button. Don't physically raise your hand. We probably won't be able to see it.
Let me ask a question to the Vienna International folks, Wolfgang and Rita. You know, airports, at least within the context of plug and play, they've always been a unique stakeholder because airports are not as competitive as, let's say, airlines or, you know, the 90 insurance companies that we work with. And we've always seen some competition that takes place across airports because they're not necessarily competing for the same passengers or travelers. But in the airport environment, are you seeing that cooperation go to a new level during this trying times? Meaning, are you guys more engaged with other airports, trying to help them out?
Well, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I think we started with plug and play. I think it was October 2018. We were the first time in Silicon Valley to see all your facilities in Sunnyvale, and we were really impressed of that. And so we signed the contract, I think 6 or 7 months ago, and the plug and play team started operating in summer of last year. And I think airports always have the same problems, yeah, to solve. And for me, it's very helpful to be in the team globally with all the airports sitting together with guys from Beijing or Mexico City, and we can hear their problems and maybe the strategy to solve them. And it's very fruitful and very helpful for us to hear that. And I think after the coronavirus, this connection will be stronger than now.
And Wolfgang, you guys also did something unique. You build an academy where airports can come and learn best practices from Vienna International. Are you seeing the appetite for those kind of initiatives dry up during the current times in terms of, you know, airports wanting to participate in the airport academy that you established?
Yeah, we'll start the academy in autumn this year. It's about the non-aviation activities of an airport, so creating an airport city. And I think it's more important than before the crisis, because non-aviation activities stabilize also the business model of an airport, because to have revenues from real estate department, the parking, the shops, the retail, and that will be the key to be successful in the future. And I'm very convinced that our academy will doing well in the future.
Great.
Perfect. And then we do have a question from Carl Lewin. Carl, can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I'd just like to first make an observation based on the earlier conversation about us all working from home now and the impact that might have on the travel industry. And from my own insights, my wife is a senior director with a US corporation, and she's been working from home for the past 4 years. Her travel dates have more than doubled during that time frame because of the requirement to obviously be in office and change office and move office during that period. So I don't believe the travel industry should fear teleworking and working from home. If anything, it's a greater opportunity for us and more opportunity in kind of short stay, local stay, because we don't have that home office anymore positions. My question is on a different matter to the collective audience here is anyone seen indications of maybe stronger visa requirements as we take international travel on? And what impact will that have on our airport time frame and commute time? Thank you.
Maybe Vipul, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, so we haven't heard about anything around additional visa requirements beyond what's already out there. There certainly could be more coming. But we do track in our database, in our services, something we call minimum connection times. And so essentially knowing if you have a connecting flight, how much time it's going to take you to go from disembarking one flight versus joining another flight. So some aspects of that. So if there are additional visa requirements, that would perhaps have to be baked into some of the minimum connection time aspects as well.
As we also have the startup Sherpa listening in the background. Max, if you could raise your hand, we can let you in. You mentioned that you could talk to that point as far as the visas are concerned and if there's a uptick in demand.
Or more restrictions.
Am I on? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, I can speak directly to this. So for background, what Sherpa does is we make it easy for travelers to understand and apply for travel visas through a set of APIs. And yeah, we've found exactly that there are more visa restrictions being turned on, whether it's temporary restrictions before a travel ban being turned on, or otherwise visa restrictions that are likely to continue after this period. We do have a resource that we'd be happy to share with the whole group as follow-up and in the chat. That's just a page that we keep up to date on changing visa restrictions through this period. So yeah.
Thank you for that. I have one question actually for all of you, Patrice, Vipul, and Wolfgang and Rita. So it seemed like for a little while at least, sustainability was becoming more of a reality when it comes to travel stakeholders. And I know Vienna International, you know, you guys are one of the leading, I would say, airports when it comes to sustainability initiatives. If I remember the numbers correctly, you were able to bring down your energy consumption by 40% and lower your carbon footprint by 70% in recent years. The question to all of you is, in light of the COVID-19 outbreak and priorities changing, do you see sustainability initiatives becoming more of a priority, or do you see it becoming deprioritized as other priorities have surfaced in recent weeks and months? Maybe we start with you, Patrice.
So I think it's a good question. I think you're right. There was a raise. Every RFP, every client wanted to know what sustainability efforts we were doing, products, all that area. It's a good question. I'm not sure I know what's going to happen after the crisis. I'm not sure why it would not still be there and still continue to increase. But the question is, how long is that going to take before we return to normalcy? I like the Vipul slides about normalcy could be between November and May of next year. I think it's not a 2020 question. I think it's going to be a 2021, and probably by mid-year next year, we're going to look at that again. That would make sense to me. But I'm not sure why it would go away. I don't think the crisis will change that trend, personally.
Vipul?
Yeah, so I think the priority is going to be focused on recovery, at least for 2020. I don't think it goes away over the long term. And I'm also interested in this question because in our innovation cycle, we were looking at doing some more, providing more data around sustainability at a route level, journey level, etc. So footprint. So we've got some things that we're already moving into. You know, we need to understand where does this fit in. So our hypothesis at this point in time is probably not a priority for 2020. It's getting back to capacity, go back to core, get in line. Where's the consolidation happening in terms of the airlines and the routes and network opportunities? But it doesn't go away. I think it's a wake-up call to say we need to deal with these bigger issues, which are also opportunities, and perhaps coming in 2021. However, we've got over 100 people here at the event. It will be great to get some feedback from everyone, say a quick survey, where is sustainability in your organization, and would that be something of value?
Great point, Vipul. I don't know, Olivia, if we could do a quick survey for the audience, but it would definitely be an interesting stat. Wolfgang and Rita, can you touch upon what you guys are doing as far as sustainability is concerned? Are those initiatives being put on hold, or are you actually doubling down on them since you have more bandwidth to focus on new initiatives?
Well, I can start with that. We continuously work on that because it's very important for us as an airport to reduce the CO2 emissions. We are working very hard, especially also with the university in Vienna, to reduce all the consumption of energy. And you mentioned the figures before. I think it's quite impressive to hear that. And it's also hard facts for our efficiency, and which also saves money for the airport to save energy, and we can do a lot for our environment.
Yeah, I mean, actually we are continuing with the project, so we didn't stop that, and they develop something that could also be used by others. And we try to explore them after this is finished and prepare maybe a rollout for this. So this is really helping us in continuing the sustainability path we entered. Yeah.
Thank you both. Olivia, I believe there aren't any other questions from the participants. Is that still accurate?
There's one more.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Do you think that different demographics will start traveling at different points in time? For instance, are millennials more likely to start traveling before anyone else?
Maybe, Vipul, we start with you.
That's a great question. Our data doesn't necessarily tell you demographics. We can talk about, in terms of those age categories, we'll certainly can reveal by region, by location, desire to travel to different destinations. So that will tell us a lot there, but not down to the level of, you know, the demographics of the population. So no data there, unfortunately, at this point.
Patrice, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a good guess. I think if I had to guess the same, I would think that older people will take some time before taking a plane or a cruise or something like that. It's going to take some time to get the confidence that it's working out. And I think it's true that we've seen all the numbers. The virus doesn't touch as much on the younger generation, so it could be a good guess. And you know, I think if I had to make a guess, maybe I'd do the same. But it's just a guess.
Wolfgang and Rita, I'm sure you guys read, and I mentioned it early on during this webinar, that the White House and the US Congress came to an agreement on a $2 trillion bailout package, some of which the funds will be allocated to travel stakeholders in the US, including airlines and other folks. I don't have as much insight into what EU is doing. Do you guys have any information in terms of similar initiatives on behalf of EU agencies trying to come up with a similar package that would be a positive thing for the travel stakeholders in Europe?
I mean, it's pretty much national, my answer. So we have a really huge program started from our government. It's a 38 billion euro program, and includes all kind of measures to be taken. And they think it will cover what is needed to come across this crisis. But I think there's the willingness to really carry the most problematic industries through this crisis. And that's what the government committed to. So it's really something, they gave a strong commitment on this. But in addition, I wanted to answer to the question before. I think whether the tourism will recover will really depend on who will be the people who travel. I think it's pretty much related to how the competition will work after the crisis, and who will survive, and how the market will look like. So who will survive? Is it the premium segment more than what will the low cost segment do after the crisis? And it's a bit of a market question and competition. So that's my opinion. I think whatever they will offer, there will be a sentiment and a market for this, and we will see how this will develop. However, we can feel that as many people now consume their holidays, there will be not a lot of holidays left over for this year. So I think this year will be a little bit tricky. Maybe next year it will be a little bit different, but should also be considered that the holiday consumption is really huge this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. For the folks on the line, the participants, 140 of you, please in the chat bot or Q&A with a yes or no, let us know if it's worthwhile for you, for Plug and Play and the various corporate partners that we work with, to hold a similar session in about a couple of weeks' time. We're hoping to do it, but it will be great to get a quick pulse of the folks who attended the webinar today, whether you want to see a similar session in a couple of weeks' time. From the Plug and Play side, I really, really wanted to thank you guys again, folks in Vienna, Patrice, Vipul, and I know Jeff had to drop off. I know your time is much more valuable than ours, and I know you guys are putting out fires left and right now, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge and best practice practices with us and with all the participants who were on the line today. And with that, I would love to pass it on to you if you have any final words, and we can go in the order of Vienna, since I know you guys are well into the evening there. If you have any final words to share with us and the participants, and then maybe we can go to Patrice, and then last but not least, Vipul, any final comments or words?
Yeah, Wolfgang here. I think, and thank you very much to have the opportunity to share our experiences, what we have done and what we will do in the future against the coronavirus and how we can handle that. I think it's the time to act globally, to work together, and I think this coronavirus crisis is also a chance to change something, maybe to correct some wrong developments in the society and also our companies. And I think it will be a boost for digital relations and to have more collaboration with all partners in the world.
Thank you, Wolfgang. Patrice?
Yes, no, I think one piece of information I did not share during the call was, in our China data, one thing we saw was once the peak of the pandemic was achieved, there was a different behavior of people once it was starting to go down day after day. And right after the peak, we could start to see hotel bookings coming back. So I think, the behavior before the peak and after the peak is very different. And I think also the fear factor before and after very different. So it feels to me that the core of a crisis is to reach the peak. And once people are through the peak, but they can see that in a month or 2 months from now, that should be okay to travel. I think we're going to start to see more bookings coming in for the future. Because right now there's no bookings in the future. I mean, it's because we haven't reached the peak in some markets. So I think it will start this way. And like I think Vipul said about domestic, definitely on the domestic market. So we need to get those peaks and we need to get through them.
Thank you, Patrice. Vipul? Vipul, I think you're muted.
I am indeed, yes. So I have two things. So thing one, thank you very much, Plug and Play, and thanks for everyone with your questions. Really appreciate participating, share what we see and learning from you what you see. Thing two, there is hope. We will climb out of this. It's just a matter of what does a new normal look like, and where do we see green shoots in different territories versus others. There will be potentially some consolidations, some movements, some ownership changes, etc. I think that will happen as well. But that is an opportunity for how the world will move forward in the travel ecosystem. And finally, thing three is you have requirements or just want to understand more. I am a messenger from many experts within OAG. Our session tomorrow is being run by John Grant. He's an analyst he has way much more understanding of capacity and changes and so on. So you can hear him as opposed to my dulcet tones tomorrow. Thank you.
So much, Vipul.